There's a particular kind of exhaustion that never shows up on your face. It doesn't come from working long hours or sleeping too little. It comes from fighting a war that nobody else can see. A war where you are both the soldier and the enemy. And the battlefield? It's every thought you have about yourself. If you've ever accomplished something meaningful and immediately wondered why you didn't do it better, faster, sooner. If you've ever received a compliment and felt your mind rush to find evidence that disproves it. If rest feels dangerous to you, like the moment you stop pushing is the moment everything falls apart, then this is for you. Not because something is wrong with you, but because something important is happening inside you that deserves to be understood. Let's talk about what it really means to be hard on yourself. Not the version you show others when you laugh and say you're just a perfectionist. The version that lives in the quiet moments. The one that whispers you're not doing enough even when you're barely holding on. Being hard on yourself is often invisible because it disguises itself as virtue. It feels like discipline. It feels like humility. It feels like ambition with sharp edges. And because our culture celebrates people who push relentlessly, who never seem satisfied, who always hunger for more, you might have spent your entire life believing that your inner harshness is your greatest strength. That without it, you'd become lazy, mediocre, forgettable. But here's what rarely gets said. The voice in your head that demands perfection, that punishes every mistake, that refuses to let you celebrate anything fully. That voice isn't helping you succeed. It's keeping you prisoner in a life where nothing is ever enough, including you. Let me describe something that might sound familiar. You finish a project. Maybe it took weeks. Maybe it took everything you had. And for a brief moment, there's relief. But within hours, sometimes minutes, something shifts. Your mind starts scanning for flaws. What could have been better? What others might criticize? And that small window of satisfaction slams shut before you even had time to look through it. This is the first pattern, the discounting of achievements. It's not that you don't accomplish things. You do. But your internal accounting system is broken. Wins get filed away instantly as things that should have happened anyway. Failures get stamped in red and stored forever. You carry a ledger that only tracks your debts, never your deposits, and you wonder why you always feel behind. Then there's the way you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. The tone you would never use with a friend, the words you would never say to someone you loved. When you make a mistake, you don't just acknowledge it, you prosecute it. You build a case against yourself using evidence from years ago, from completely unrelated situations, all to prove a verdict you decided on long before the trial began. You're not just hard on yourself, you're relentless. And you call this accountability. Here's another pattern that hides in plain sight: the inability to rest without guilt. You might take a day off, but you don't actually take it. Your body is on the couch, but your mind is writing a list of everything you should be doing instead. Rest becomes contaminated. It stops being recovery and becomes evidence of weakness. So you stay tired, not because you don't have time to rest, but because you don't have permission. And then there's the way you handle praise. Someone tells you that you did well, that you matter, that you made a difference, and something in you flinches. You deflect, you minimize. You immediately point to someone who did it better, or you bring up that one part that wasn't quite right. Compliments don't land because deep down, you don't believe you're allowed to receive them. Not really, not fully, not until you finally become the version of yourself that deserves them, a version that keeps moving further away no matter how far you go. There's also this. You fear complacency the way some people fear failure. The idea of being content, of saying this is good enough, of resting in satisfaction, it terrifies you. Because somewhere along the way, you learn that the moment you stop criticizing yourself is the moment you start declining. So you keep the pressure on, always. You treat your own peace like it's a threat. Now here's where it gets deeper. If you trace this back far enough, you'll often find a voice that wasn't originally yours. The inner critic usually begins as an outer one. A parent who only noticed what you did wrong. A teacher who made you feel small. A culture or community that taught you love had to be earned and could always be revoked. You didn't choose to be this hard on yourself. You adapted. You survived. You learned that if you beat everyone else to the criticism, it would hurt less when it came from the outside. In psychology, this is sometimes called the punitive superego, a part of you that internalized authority figures and their standards, then kept enforcing those standards long after you left home. It's the voice that says you're not allowed to fail, not allowed to disappoint, not allowed to be human. And because this voice has been with you for so long, it feels like the truth. It feels like you, but it's not you. It's a survival mechanism that stayed past its usefulness. Here's something else that needs to be said. Self-criticism often creates an illusion of control. When life feels chaotic or when outcomes are uncertain, punishing yourself can feel like you're doing something, like you're managing the problem. If I'm hard on myself, I'm not being careless. If I expect the worst, I won't be caught off guard. But this isn't control. It's a cage dressed up as a steering wheel. You're not guiding anything. You're just suffering in advance. And maybe the most painful part of all this is that it costs you the very things you're working so hard to earn. You push yourself to succeed, but you can't enjoy success. You work toward connection, but you can't receive love because you don't believe you're worthy of it. You achieve, you accumulate, you build. But inside, you're still standing in front of that mirror asking why it's not enough, why you're not enough. Being hard on yourself isn't fuel. It's a fire that burns the house you're trying to build. And this is where we have to flip the script. I know, it feels wrong. It feels reckless. Your brain is screaming that if you put down the whip, you'll stop moving entirely. But consider this. Compassion isn't the enemy of ambition. It's the fuel that keeps the engine running without burning it out. That voice telling you that rest is a sin, that your worth is a transaction, that you are only as good as your last success. That voice isn't protecting you. It's just scaring you. And it's been wrong all along. You don't have to silence your inner critic completely. That's not realistic, and it's not even the goal. But you can start to question it. You can ask, whose voice is this really? You can notice when you're being harsh and gently interrupt the pattern, not with toxic positivity, not with empty affirmations, but with something more honest. Something like, I'm doing the best I can. And right now, that's allowed to be enough. You are not your worst mistakes. You are not the sum of your shortcomings. You are a person carrying a weight you were never supposed to carry alone. And the bravest thing you can do isn't to push harder. It's to finally, gently, put some of it down. If this video made you pause, even for a second, then it did what it was supposed to do. Leave a comment. Tell me what part hit closest to home. Because I promise you, someone else watching needs to see they're not alone in this, and neither are you.